We have titled this communique, "The Threatening Decomposition of Democracy in Nigeria," being the text of a press conference by the Labour and Civil Society Front. And this is in defense of Nigeria's democracy and in solidarity with Nigerian workers. 2023 general election have taken place, but its ripples and aftermath for our promising democracy have been worrisome and frightening. Some of us who are architects of Nigeria's current democratic experience, being human rights activists, political rights advocates, progressives, civil society and labor union activists that fought the military for the restoration of democratic governance in Nigeria, have watched with utter astonishment how the processes and procedures meant to consolidate our 24 years of democratic wings have been greatly eroded through the 2023 general elections. We entered this season of elections with a strong consensus by Nigerians that the new Electoral Act will improve the level of electoral accountability and the huge financial investment of about 355 billion in the electoral processes, including the deployment of beavers and the use of INEC IREV, will make a marked difference in the elections. Sadly, the 2023 general elections became an anticlimax, dashing the hopes of Nigerians for credible elections and denying citizens the emergence of qualitative political leadership across Nigeria. Clearly, INEC in cohort with some members of the political class have driven a death nail into the democratic experience of most Nigerians, thus leaving the electorate despondent, resort to self-help in their effort to salvage whatever is left of their vibrant political engagement with the 2023 elections. Unfortunately, majority of Nigerians, especially the youths, who fought with patriotism to reset their country through the ballot box, are now wondering if elections have become the tool for legitimizing the corrupt to take over Nigeria. This dark cloud of anguish arising from the terribly mismanaged 2023 general elections has jolted the confidence and hope of many Nigerians, thus propelling us as citizens of conscience to take this bold step of beginning to resist and mitigate the intended and unintended crisis looming over our dear country. Recall the hard-earned democratic reputations of many of the people seated here today, who organized in the early 1990s through actions of coalitions of citizens' organizations, labor, human rights, and for an end to military dictatorship. Their voices held sway as they resorted to citizens' action, demonstrations, strikes, global solidarity action, and other civil resistance measures to compel the regimes of Presidents Ibrahim Babangida and Sani Abacha to concede to the wishes of the citizens. From all indications, the 2023 general elections has become a rude reminder of how quickly things can degenerate, and that the emergence of what was then termed gunpowdered democracy, through which incumbent military regimes manipulated political processes to transmutate themselves into elected governments, to transmutate into elected democratic governments. This has given way to corrupt money. This has given way to corrupt money, powered, imposed rulership, manipulating the trajectory of democratic processes and elections to capture and perpetuate themselves in power. Like I said, some hitches here and there. In what we see as a democratic redemptive mission, we, the vanguards of concerned citizens and Democrats, with a front seat in the history of democratic transitions in Nigeria, are committed to ensuring that political leadership is not foisted on the country at the expense of the democratic gains made so far. As a first step, we have decided to signify our public displeasure at INEC and those behind the political coup against the well laid out and established electoral norms and standards contained in the Electoral Act of 2022. Therefore, we condemn the outright manipulations of the electoral process and the abdication of responsibility by INEC, as it has not only destroyed trust in the democratic process, but has rewarded wrongdoing, making it possible for persons of stupendous reach, controversial background, who lack legitimacy, to become the real beneficiaries of our electoral process. We had concerns. Some of our pre-election concerns are as follows. Prior to the 2023 general elections, INEC showed early signs of inconsistency by shifting electoral deadlines, which favored the ruling party. INEC also discouraged new voters from registering through an abrupt decision to halt the continuous voters registration. And as if that was not enough, INEC deployed technical personnel manning sensitive positions to non-technical roles, thereby interrupting the seamless and effective deployment of technology in the elections. As a decoy, INEC initially displayed a high level of preparedness during the off-season elections in Anambra, Ekiti, Osun governorship elections. INEC's use of technology in those elections gave Nigerians reason to believe that technology will apply in the subsequent 2023 general elections, thereby causing Nigerians to be caught off their guards. Though not unexpected, INEC and security agencies failed to act when in some areas such as Lagos, attacks on non-indigenous groups wanting to vote were unleashed by the ruling party. Similarly, the use of hate speeches and other criminal behaviors were treated with levity, thereby incentivizing the subsequent use of electoral violence, brigandage, and outright impunity during the 2023 general elections. To give one graphic example, the Labour Party senatorial candidate for Enugu East was brutally attacked, set ablaze along with 6 other persons, and murdered a few days to the 25th February presidential and National Assembly elections with little or no consequences. On election day, this is on the 25th of February as well as the 18th of March 2023, INEC operatives were operations were poorly carried out. And this we can see from all the reports of international and local observers that have presented their reports so far. The deployment of election materials to polling units witnessed deliberate lapses, while security personnel could not contain the criminal activities of armed thugs that took over strategic polling units in violation of Electoral Act 2022 and the 2023 election guidelines. These weaknesses were further worsened by huge and open inducement of voters with cash and gifts by political party operatives in the full glare of security operators. Additionally, the speed with which INEC and its officials were willing to disregard the provisions of the sections of the Electoral Act and their own electoral guidelines to hurriedly announce election results, not minding the fact that the processes were severely undermined, gave grounds for deep concerns. For instance, sections of the Electoral Act and the guidelines were ignored, and manual accreditation of voters for both the presidential and governorship elections were endorsed, thus opening the floodgate for the destruction of the sanctity and credibility of the 2023 elections. The most phenomenal failure by INEC was her refusal to upload the presidential election results from BVAS onto IREV at real time, as stipulated by the Electoral Act, the INEC guidelines for the 2023 elections, as well as the repeated position espoused by the INEC chairman. This happened even as the National Assembly conducted its elections on the same time, on the same day, with this happened even as National Assembly elections were conducted at the same time and on the same day and seamlessly uploaded onto Beavers. The blatant inconsistencies by INEC in applying different electoral standards in conducting same-day elections for presidential and National Assembly point to a deliberate manipulation of INEC's well-published guidelines, which INEC mindlessly replaced, opting for administrative arbitrariness. In summary, Nigeria suffered a monumental reversal in her electoral and democratic gains through the criminal mismanagement of the electoral process by INEC and security agencies, who both compromised their duties and donated their powers of election refereeing and law enforcement to unscrupulous politicians bent on imposing their self-will over and above that of the people. A brazen and most shameful example was seen in Adamawa, where INEC, emboldened by its many earlier infractions, decided to go for broke by declaring Senator Binani as winner of an unconcluded governorship election. Let's look at the future as we chart our way forward. As vanguards of Nigeria's democratic heritage, we are calling for a return to a rules-based democracy in which Nigerians can remain hopeful that their sacrifices of participating in elections will ultimately count. Therefore, as affected individuals and parties resort to the courts as the main conflict-resolving mechanism, we hope that the judiciary, as the final arbiter, will ensure that the malfeasances of those powerful individuals and their corrupt allies will not be rewarded, but rather they will be discredited and punished. It is in the light of this hope that we are calling on all Nigerians to believe again, not in INEC, not in the executive, but in the judiciary, and give the judiciary the benefit of doubt. In the same vein, we are calling on the justices of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court to rise up to the occasion by restoring the people's confidence in the processes that were abused by INEC and thereby stem the decline of our democracy. In the meantime, we are aware that should the judiciary fail to act expeditiously, it will amount to a denial of justice, an invitation to self-help and anarchy. Our recent exposure to attacks on the media by agents of the ruling party and their resort to the NBC for punitive measures against media channels send frightening but real-life experience of an evolving future which is very ominous for democracy. To stop these menacing actions and attacks against the media and civil liberties of individuals and youth groups, the court must act now. We also wish to state clearly that our duty as vanguards of Nigeria's democratic advancement is to speak out and alert Nigerians in clear conscience of these inescapable impediments. Nigeria's democracy was earned on the blood and sweat of many of our colleagues who have paid the supreme price. For those who are still with us here today, and many of them are seated in this room today, we celebrate and appreciate them as we remind ourselves of the sacrifices of our forebears and those of our democratic champions. Our calling is to stay focused as citizens with a vested interest in the survival of a healthy democracy. We're drawn from the Nigerian civil society, labor movements, and many other progressive constituencies. We are bounded by nationalistic conscience, fully aware of our historical experiences, and also willing, and also the younger generation who are willing to rally behind the electoral reforms, who are willing to rally behind past and recent electoral reforms. The new push for holistic, popular and judicial rescue based on democratic principles shall not be dimmed by what we see as thwarting tendencies facilitated by state actors. We believe it is our responsibility to protect and uphold the democratic gains our country has made, and by standing up for a rules-based democracy as required by the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Electoral Act of 2022. We shall preserve that which we have labored to build in the past 24 years. Our belief is firm that with these democratic principles, we can continue to resist through peaceful means, the hideous dangers of allowing compromised, discredited, flawed elections to subvert our common destiny and a prosperous future for Nigeria, for which we all badly yearn. To this end, we wish to announce in association with NLC, the TUC, human rights organizations, citizens and youth movements, and allies of like-minded political organizations, that we have decided to serve as an alert mechanism for the conscience of Nigerians and defenders of Nigeria's democracy by engaging our key institutions, especially INEC, the judiciary, the legislature, security services, squarely to resist the vicious and corruptive pressures from state operatives and political class who insist on a total takeover and control of these relevant state organs. We are quickly reminded that in the Arab Spring, the affected countries had constitutions, they had laws, they had courts, they had democratic institutions. Yet, the young people and the people of those countries arose and took to the streets to express their dissatisfaction for the lack of connection between what was happening in their country and what were stated to be legally binding in those laws and instruments that were before them. We are in a similar season of such broken trust in Nigeria. And it will be risky for us to replace mistrust with empty promises. We believe that there is need to fight for and achieve tangible democratic consolidation within legally binding premises. As vanguards for the defense of Nigeria's democracy, we will strive to protect our collective democratic aspirations and ethos as a country, with our immediate goal being to hold a watching brief over the judiciary and its actions. We are therefore soliciting the cooperation of the Nigerian Bar Association and lawyers for the defense of justice to partner with us to reawaken the consciousness of the judiciary to its constitutional responsibility of defending our frail democracy through the enthronement of justice. Finally, in the words of Nelson Mandela, we wish to remind Nigerians that the theft of an election is not an attack on the people's right to vote, but on their dignity and their humanity. Consequently, we wish to call on all Nigerians to stand up, join us, and be counted in our renewed struggle for the defense of democracy and the rule of law in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Solidarity forever.
Excellent. Yes, you did well.
Solidarity forever. For the union,